Syrian Arab communities abroad strongly condemn Damascus terrorist bombing. The EU and Russia condemned Thursday's bloody attacks, and Washington foils an attempt to condemn the terrorist bombings in the United Nations Security Council. Abdullahian says Syria's battle against terrorism would be in interest of the Syrian people. Good afternoon, this is News in English from the Syrian Arab television in Damascus. In the aftermath of the terrorist bombings that hit al-Mazra'a neighborhood in Damascus, the Minister of Health, Dr. Saad al-Naif, toured Ibn al-Nafis Hospital, checking the health conditions of the injured citizens, as he met with the medical staff at the hospital and took a look at the medical treatment offered to citizens there. The Minister of Health stressed that these terrorist bombings won't affect the Syrians well, pointing out that all the health centers and hospitals are working 24/7 to provide the needed health care. More than 200 persons were wounded in Thursday's bloody attacks. Members of the Syrian and Arab communities in Moscow strongly condemned the terrorist bombing that hit Damascus last Thursday. In a press statement, members of the community said that this attack targets the land of amity, peace and Arabism, which has always been a steadfast fort in the face of the imperialistic and Zionist schemes. In the same context, in a press statement, the Syrian and Arab communities in Australia denounced the terrorist bombing which targeted civilians, describing this act as one of the tools of the conspiracies hatched against Syria. The Syrian students studying in the Czech Republic severely denounced the coward act and stressed their complete support for their homeland and people. A group of Syrian youth launched a frustration campaign in Jaramana city in Damascus countryside, where they planted saplings near the tombs of Syrian military and civilian martyrs who sacrificed their lives for the sake of their homeland and people. The participants expressed pride in the sacrifices offered by martyrs and stressed that thanks to these sacrifices, Syrian people will achieve victory against terrorism and its supporters. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said that the U.S. veto against the Security Council statement condemning the terrorist bombings which hit Damascus last Thursday shows that Washington uses double standards when dealing with terrorism. Following his talks with his Chinese counterpart Yang Jiechi, Lavrov voiced Moscow's frustration with the fact that all member states of the United Nations Security Council, without exception, were until recently inclined towards the position of condemning any terrorist attacks, regardless of their perpetrators, place and motives. Lavrov added that Russia sees in the American position an application of double standards and a dangerous approach in terms of the American moving away from the main principle of condemning terrorism in all its forms. For his part, the Chinese foreign minister said his country unconditionally condemns Damascus bombings, stressing that Beijing supports an unbiased approach towards the crisis in Syria. An Iraqi media delegation has condemned the alleged bombings in al-Mazra'a area in Damascus that targeted the innocent Syrians, among them school students. The Iraqi delegation further asserted that the steadfastness of the Syrian people, with the help of their honest Arab brethren in the Arab world, was behind pushing the Gulf states to hatch conspiracies against Syria and to shed the blood of the Syrians. The delegation called upon the honest journalists worldwide to disclose all fabrications and lies broadcast by some media outlets that misinform the people about the situation in Syria. Iranian Deputy Foreign Minister for Arab and African Affairs, Hussein Amir Abdullahian, said that Syria's battle against terrorism will be in the interest of the Syrian people soon. Abdullahian said in a statement to ISNA news agency that resistance of the Syrian people against terrorist acts defeats terrorists. He added that the armed groups which remain in Syria should surrender their weapons. Otherwise, they will receive a decisive response by Syria as government and people. Head of the Change and Reform Bloc, member of the Parliament, General Michel Aoun, stressed in an interview with Al-Manar TV channel that dialogue is the only way out of the crisis in Syria. Aoun criticized some Lebanese sides that are supporting the terrorist groups with money and arms. He said that Syria is currently being exposed to international, regional and Arab campaigns to shake its stability and destroy its infrastructure. But Syria is still steadfast because the Syrian people are the only ones who have the right to determine their future and their destiny. The European Union condemned Damascus' recent terrorist bombings. In a statement, EU High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, Catherine Ashton, said nothing can justify such a brutal act that led to the death of so many people, particularly civilians, among them children. Ashton said that the EU denounces any attack of any form of violence against civilians. In local news, Minister of Justice Dr. Najm al-Ahmad discussed with members of Complaints and Petitions Committee at the People's Assembly a number of complaints presented by the citizens. The complaints focused mainly on the Ministries of Justice work and its main role in speeding up with delivering verdicts over urgent cases. The meeting also reviewed the mechanism of competitions carried out by the Ministry of Justice to choose new judges. Dr. Ahmad affirmed that the latest judges competition that triggered controversy was supervised by a judicial committee in line with the highest standards of transparency and clarity. He promised that all remarks and proposals presented concerning the competition to be held in the future would be taken into consideration. Members of the committee expressed hope that the ministry would play its full judicial role along with the security bodies in monitoring custody and interrogation the citizens, and to name the body that has detained the citizen and reasons for detention, with the aim to protect the citizen and the homeland. Bahraini forces have dispersed anti-regime demonstrations in Adia, Buri, Stra, Sarbuni, Jumra and Ad-Darraz areas. The Bahraini police fired live bullets and tear gas, causing many casualties among the protesters. The demonstrations came following the death of a young man who was shot dead by the Bahraini security forces earlier. With this, we reach the end of our news. More details on our website www.syriaonline.sy. Our economic news and a look at the stock markets after the break with Vanny.